welcome to Tennessee's At-Home Learning Series for Literacy. Today's lesson is for all our 6th graders out there, though everyone is welcome to tune in. This lesson is the second in this week's series. My name is Megan Gilly, and I am a 6th grade teacher in Tennessee schools. I'm super excited to be a part of this lesson with you today. Welcome to my virtual classroom. If you want to watch this lesson or previous lessons, you may go to Tennessee Department of Education's website at www.tn.gov/education. Of course, you can still tune in to today's lesson, but it might be more fun if you go back and watch the other lessons first, since today we'll be talking about things that we learned previously. Today, we will be learning more about sticky rice. Before we get started, to participate fully in our lesson, you are going to need the following materials. You need paper, a pen or pencil, a surface to write on, your student response to lesson 16 if you have it, and the student packet for ELA grade 6, lesson 17, which can be found at the Tennessee Department of Education's website. So go ahead and gather your items, and we will get started. In our previous lesson, we began reading the informational article, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, and we learned how the author used a strong hook to get readers interested in the text. So let's review the different types of hooks that we talked about. Remember, a hook is a sentence, paragraph, or section that gets the reader interested in the text. And there's 3 types of hooks that we talked about. A question that gets the reader thinking about the topic, an anecdote, which is just a fancy word for a story, and a statement, which directly relates to the central idea. The author of the text, A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, introduces the article with a story about Luck, one of the main characters, and his need and desire for sticky rice. For independent activity, you wrote 2 new hooks for the beginning of the article about sticky rice. One hook should have been a question hook, and the other was a statement hook. I also challenged you to include at least one of the following words in your example. So take a minute to read what you wrote. And I'm going to read an example to you. I want you to listen to each hook and the explanation for why the student chose that hook to engage the readers. So the first one says, have you ever felt like you have a hole in your stomach and you need that one meal to make it close? I have, and I know of a cuisine that has the perfect stickiness to make me whole again. Nice play on words, whole and whole, wasn't it? I chose this hook because I feel that all people can relate to being hungry and also have that one craving that will solve the hunger. Also, the student had included stickiness to give a hint about the food that the article would be about. So what type of hook was this? You're right, it was a question hook. Have you ever felt like you have that hole in your stomach? Is the question. Let's take a look at the second one. The second student example says, with all the new culinary recipes available in the world, there's still one place that is still using a recipe that is more than 4,000 years old to create a very sticky cuisine. The student said that I chose this hook because it emphasizes that Laos still depends on a food that has been prepared the same way for 4,000 years and shows that it's still important and sticky. I noticed as a teacher that in both of the hooks that the student wrote, there was something to get the reader's attention and interested in the text. So after writing your own hooks and hearing these 2 examples, which hook do you think is the most effective for introducing the sticky rice text? I don't know what you think, but I think whatever the author chooses is right. Luck's story that we read really has me interested to find out more about the sticky rice that he was craving so much and why. Today, our goal is to see how the author uses both narrative and informational text to support a central idea. We will begin with me showing you what that looks like, and then there will be time for you to practice on your own with my support. Finally, I will assign you an independent activity that you can complete after the video ends. Before we read our text today, let's see where is the country of Laos on the world map. Laos, again, is a country in Southeast Asia below China. So if you look, it's shaded red on the map. Laos is a landlocked country, meaning they do not have access to a freshwater port. So whenever you're looking at the map, you can see that it is separated here by land from where they would normally get access to water. Here are some pictures that capture life in Laos. The picture in the upper left-hand corner is an aerial view of the capital city, Vientiane. It's beautiful. It has the largest population in Laos. The picture to the right is a street market, like the one mentioned in the introduction of the story yesterday, where customers can buy foods and goods. The bottom left picture shows rice farmers using water buffalo to help harvest the country's staple crop, sticky rice. And finally, the bottom right picture that you see there was an example of sticky rice served in Laos. In our first lesson, we analyzed how the author in A Taste of Sticky Rice, Laos's national dish, started the article. The author tells us a story about his Laotian friend, Luck, who was really hungry and craving some sticky rice. Luck was able to buy some sticky rice from a woman outside the bus, and once he ate his rice, he felt much better. There were a few more details to the story, but overall, the author is just trying to introduce the topic of sticky rice being an important part of Laotian cuisine. The author decides to address this topic by writing a travel narrative. In this travel narrative that we started, the author will talk about his own personal experience and provide factual details about Laos and sticky rice. By the end of the lesson today, you'll write your own travel narrative that blends a true personal story with factual details. Your travel story will be an informational text similar to the one that we are reading. Before we begin, let's go ahead and begin our notes. I would like for you to draw what is up on the screen, a 2-column chart, and it just needs to take the top half of your paper is fine. And on the left-hand side, you're going to label the column Travel Narrative, and then you will label the right-hand column Informational Text. Okay, I'll take a moment for you to do that. While you are, in this chart, we're going to be writing down some characteristics of travel narratives. Remember, a narrative being a story, travel being about travel. So I bet you could already write some characteristics of travel narratives. I want you to write some characteristics down that a travel narrative might include. I'll give you a moment to jot some things down. Again, what might a travel narrative include? What characteristics? I hope you wrote something down. It's super important to be thinking about these prompts and try to answer the questions on your own. While I'm here to guide you, you have to do the thinking too. If you didn't, don't worry though, I am here to help. Now, I know again that narrative means story, so when I filled in my chart, I filled in characteristics that I know exist in stories. So here's what I filled in. And this is kind of zoomed in. I said that characteristics of a travel narrative includes characters or real-life people. It has dialogue where we are talking back and forth between two people or more. It describes the setting or character actions. And of course, it has to deal with travel of some sort. So if you didn't get any of those down, go ahead and take a moment to fill that in. This information will be helpful when you complete your independent practice, so keep it with you. We'll finish the second half of this chart after we read our text today. So let's go ahead and get started. We will begin reading starting with paragraph 6 today and read through paragraph 12. So on the bottom half of your paper, I want you to number your paper 6 through 12, just as I have up on the screen. And if you want to skip between your numbers, that's completely fine. For each paragraph that we read today, you're going to have to analyze what the paragraph is saying, and then we're going to create a heading for that paragraph. As we go along, I'll give you an example. But if you feel that your response is similar, you're going to put a check mark. If not, you can cross out your response and write a revised heading right next to it. Are you ready? Got your paper numbered? Here we go. A taste of sticky rice, Laos's national dish, starting paragraph 6. What explains the national love of sticky rice? Many Laotians laughed when I asked them. Sticky rice is what their grandparents and great-grandparents ate, they said. Perhaps they were caught off guard by my question. Like baguettes in France and sushi in Japan, sticky rice is so ingrained in Laos's culinary heritage that most Laotians don't think about it in isolation. So that paragraph should sound similar from yesterday. That's where we left off. And I wanted to go back out to it because the national love of sticky rice and culinary heritage really stood out to me. These phrases provide clues about what this paragraph is giving me details about. So I want you to think, for this paragraph, what would be a good heading? I want you to write it down next to number 6 on your piece of paper. National love of sticky rice, Laos's culinary heritage. Great. Check to see if your heading is similar to what I wrote down. Next to number 6, I put that sticky rice is an important part of Laos's culinary heritage, or you could have something like sticky rice is an important part of Laos's culinary heritage. It's the same thing. So you can't go wrong with one of those. If yours is close to that, put a check mark. If it's not, go ahead and jot one of those down. And we're going to continue reading. Be thinking about, what in the next section could I write down as a potential heading? All right, so let's keep reading. Sticky or glutinous rice has been growing in mainland Southeast Asia for at least 4,000 years. Historians debate whether ancient farmers grew sticky rice because it was suited to local growing conditions or because they liked its taste and chewy texture. What's clear is that by the 18th century, sticky rice had been largely replaced across the region by varieties of non-glutinous rice, aka white rice. So before we write a heading for this paragraph, I want you to think about the word glutinous and what it means. I bet you could probably figure it out by context. So let me reread that first sentence one more time. It says, sticky or glutinous rice has been growing in mainland Southeast Asia for at least 4,000 years. So what do you think glutinous means? I think you're right. I think it means sticky here. Great job. So what do you think non-glutinous means? It was replaced across the region by varieties of non-glutinous. Yeah, meaning it's not sticky. Great job. So what is this paragraph about? We have phrases like for at least 4,000 years, historians debate, by the 18th century. Those phrases might give you a clue as to what the important takeaways of this section might be. So on your piece of paper next to number 7, I want you to write a heading that describes what type of information this paragraph is giving us. Historians debate by the 18th century for at least 4,000 years. All right, so next to number 7, you might have written something that looks like this. History of sticky rice in Southeast Asia, or sticky rice's history. If you got something along those lines, put a check mark next to it. If not, go ahead and write a revised heading. And as we continue reading, think about what information the next paragraph is giving. Let's read on. But sticky rice is still the primary staple in Laos in parts of the 5 countries bordering it: China, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. In Laos, slightly larger in area than Utah, per capita sticky rice consumption is the highest on earth at more than 345 pounds per year. The average American, by contrast, eats less than 20 pounds of rice annually, according to the United States Drug Administration. So this paragraph gives us some pretty interesting information. The first half of the paragraph gives us some geographical information about Laos and the surrounding countries. And the second half of the paragraph is comparing how much rice Laotians eat compared to the United States. So I think that a heading for this section could go into 2 different directions. So let's see what you come up with. On your piece of paper next to number 8, I want you to jot down what you think an appropriate heading might be for this particular paragraph. Again, be thinking about what that first half was about, geographical information versus the bottom half. And your heading might look something like this. Sticky rice is an important food for the countries of Southeast Asia, or you might have something as Laotians eat a ton of sticky rice. So if your heading looks similar to one of those, put a check mark. If not, you can jot one of those on your piece of paper and write a revised heading. And let's be thinking about paragraph 9. What could a possible appropriate heading be for the next section? Urbanization, migration, and other forces are altering rice consumption habits across Laos, says historian Grant Evans, to the point where some urban dwellers now associate sticky rice with country bumpkin ways of eating. But Evans, the author of several books about Laos, also says he doesn't know a single Laotian person who never eats sticky rice. From a cultural perspective, he explained, sticky rice is still the way the Lao identify themselves. Case in point, as of the mid-1900s, a popular Laotian band in the United States was calling itself khao now, the Laotian words for, sure enough, sticky rice. So to better understand what this paragraph is about, we need to take a look at a couple of the words. We have urbanization, altering, and consumption in the first sentence. So let me reread what that sentence says again. Urbanization, migration, and other forces are altering rice consumption habits across Laos, says historian Grant Evans, to the point where some urban dwellers now associate sticky rice with country bumpkin ways of eating. Now you might be able to figure out the definition of urbanization because part of that word is urban. You might know that that's a characteristic or town of a city. So the word urbanization is referring to the process of making a city. The word for altering, the root word is alter. So what do you think it means to alter? Well, it means to change. So these forces are changing rice consumption. What about rice consumption and the habits? Consumption is to eat or take in. So I might reword that as rice instead of consumption habits to rice eating habits. So now I want you to carefully think about that and write a heading for number 9. Something about rice consumption similar to what I have would be fine. Rice consumption is changing in Laos. Or even though Laos is changing, most people still eat sticky rice. I know I didn't give you a whole lot of time to jot that one down, but you may jot one of those. And for number 10, I'll give you a little bit longer wait time. So let's move on. The dish comes in various shapes and sizes. A recent agricultural research project on rice in Laos involved more than 13,000 rice samples, more than 11,000 of them glutinous, meaning sticky. But the basic method of consuming khao now, sticky rice, is the same countrywide. Harvested sticky rice grains, which are typically shorter and fatter than non-glutinous ones, such as white rice, are soaked overnight, steamed in the morning, and eaten all day. Sticky rice still tastes great after 2 steamings, said Luck, but steaming it three times, and making it too sticky. Because sticky rice lacks the starch amylose, it congeals and breaks off into fist-sized pieces more easily than white rice under similar cooking conditions. When I read this paragraph, there are some details that stand out, and I noticed it said the basic method is the same. It also stated that soaked overnight and steamed in the morning, and it also mentioned that it still tastes great after 2 steamings. So with those details in mind, what do you think a good combined heading might be? Basic method of cooking it. Here's what you do. You soak them overnight. Still tastes great after 2 steamings. Great. So an appropriate heading might look like this: how sticky rice is prepared, or how sticky rice is made. Keep it simple, keep headings simple, and just think of what are the biggest takeaways of that paragraph. And that's really what this paragraph is about. So let's keep reading here. A hunk of sticky rice is a delicious bread-like dipping implement. Laotians prefer to eat sticky rice with non-soupy dishes rather than with just curries and sauces, says Caroline Gaylord, co-founder of Tamarind, a cafe and cooking school in Luang Prabang, the former Laotian royal capital. According to Gaylord, an Australian who moved to the country, sticky rice complements the popular Laotian dish jiao, a dry paste made from chili peppers and herbs, as well as the royal dish Mauk Pa Phok, which features steamed fish, dill, shallots, and coconut milk. This paragraph gives us some interesting information, but I'm having trouble thinking of a heading. So take a look at this sentence that says, a hunk of sticky rice is a delicious bread-like dipping implement. Here we have the word implement, and if I took and put something else in its place, you'll see there I have tool. So some other lines that stand out to me are that Laotians prefer to eat sticky rice with non-soupy dishes, and it mentioned a particular rice dish such as jiao. So when I think of an appropriate paragraph heading, I think of how Laotians eat sticky rice, or sticky rice can go with many Laotian dishes. So think about, is that something you might have been thinking about as we read? And we'll read quickly this next paragraph due to our time together today. So our last paragraph says, sticky rice figures in religious traditions across Laos, where the predominant faith is Theravada-nuh Buddhism. Laotians cook sticky rice dishes, khao tam, a fusion of sticky rice, coconut, banana, and mung bean, for ceremonies related to plantings, rainfall, harvest, and death. During the popular baci ceremony, uncooked sticky rice grains are tossed into the air after communal prayers. And when a Laotian is dying, a village elder may rub sticky rice on the person and throw the rice away to banish bad spirits. So I want you to be thinking about potential headings for this paragraph. One of the things that I think about when I read this was, I know that when I've attended some weddings, people throw rice up into the air. And so this reminds me of that a little bit. There's a couple of different lines here. We have sticky rice figures in religious traditions, predominant faith. We have for ceremonies related to plantings, rainfall, harvests, and death, and that it's tossed into the air after communal prayers. So I want you to go ahead and write down what you think an appropriate heading would be for this paragraph. And I know that based on those details, as you're thinking of something, I know that sticky rice has something to do with the religious practice. So be thinking about that as you are going to jot yours down. And check mine. I said that sticky rice plays an important role in religious practices in Laos, or sticky rice is more than just food. It all plays a role in the Laotian spirituality. So anything along those lines, you can put a check mark or revise your heading if needed. So great work. We're going to stop there for today. Before we started reading, we had jotted down characteristics of a travel narrative, which we said it includes characters or real-life people, has dialogue, describes the setting or character actions, and has to deal with travel. During our reading, our story about Luck and the author as they travel through Laos takes a back seat, and we're given a whole lot of information about sticky rice in today's reading and its impact on Laotian culture. So I want you to be thinking about some of the details of an informational text. So on your chart, you can jot down that an informational text, especially based on what we read today, conveys factual information. It may include numbers or data. It may provide historical or geographical facts, and it explains information, and it might use quotes from excerpts. So you can take a screenshot of that if needed. For your independent activity today, I want you to write a one-page journal entry about a time when you traveled to somewhere new. Similar to our article, your journal entry should include characteristics of a travel narrative and an informational text. That means you will write a true personal account and also include factual details about the place that you traveled to. You can gather the factual details by using your own background knowledge and experience, by doing some research online, or by asking an adult about the place you are talking about in your journal entry. So have fun writing about your travels. I look forward to hearing about them. And I look forward to hearing more about sticky rice. I had fun learning about it with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your home. I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning Series for Literacy. Bye.